What are we doing
Well, I
now?
mean,
What's your point?
yeah, yeah. My bad point is just okay. We talked about it already. The fact that Mongolia now has a team that is vying for pretty much vying for titles. I think you can actually safely say that they're fighting. They're a contender. That's fair to say. And obviously, they're primarily Asian. You have mostly European teams. You even have Brazilian teams that I guess I guess MIBR and Furia fell short, but they were both 2-3. So even Pain right there is pretty close. You know, they're 1-3 in this sort of stage. And I just have to say, the bad point I have is North America just it's just run out of excuses, unfortunately. It's just run out of excuses. When Asia is able to produce a team, when Brazil is able to produce this many teams, I just don't know anymore what North America there's so many different factors, but the bad point is just like in these playoffs of this major, there are only, as far as I can tell, three North American players that are actually competing, and one of them is Mega Cope, by the way. It's NAF, it's Twiz, and it's
Right.
Mobs.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
you know,
Because the Mobs one is like people don't traditionally think
it's
they're thinking of Canada and the USA when they met AA normally. I know what you
yeah.
mean. True.
I
True.
mean, sure, you would even say I would even say Mexico is North America to me for
Sure.
sure,
But
but
just in terms of the
Guatemala.
category, sure, sure.
Like Guatemala is technically just north of the
Yeah.
Panama Canal, basically, and so it technically qualifies as our continent. But it's like we don't really
But
think
this
of
way,
it as
here's the
that.
rule, Maui. If people from any of themselves wouldn't actually be able to answer on who wants to be a millionaire, is that country actually in your region? I'm not sure that we could say that. Yeah, then Guatemala, of course, we represent
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Were you guys? I think you're just saying that now because you know how good Malps is, guys. Like I'm
Well,
trying to inherit him too. It's pretty
Maui.
good.
Well, Maui. So Asia does have Donk as well, right?
Okay, there you go. Right.
So-
Yeah, technically
okay,
Russia.
sure.
You know that's debatable in history. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
So
yeah, go on.
I mean, so my bad point is simply put, just that looking at how this whole major shook up, and looking at the teams that even made it to this point, like, come on, the best, like, I don't even consider Wildcard to really be an American team when they have
Sure.
two guys from North America in Stanislaw and Jaba. They have a South African and they have two Swedish guys. The best performing, truly North American team at this event was Complexity.
Yeah.
You know, they went 2-3. I don't even need to dive headfirst into Complexity and all their faults. I feel like we do that every other episode.
It is every
It's just-
3 episodes. True.
Yeah.
And it's nearly
So
always bad or ugly. Spoiler. Like.
Well, on the bright side, now you don't have to talk about his lineup at the end by the end of the year. 100%
Probably.
it's not going to stay the same.
Okay.
Probably not. But I mean, but I think even just peeling it back even more and zooming out more, thinking of the other majority American teams that were here at the Americas RMR, M80.
Is the bad
Yeah,
point lack of NA presence is essentially the point here?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right.
It's just the underperformance by the North
Ah,
American
right.
teams and the lack of representation, even in terms of like, you know, budding stars. Like again, like it's so cope to say Mobs is a budding North American star
Sure.
also, but like from other regions, you could sometimes say in the past, like, oh, like, you know, this guy's interesting, that guy's interesting, like I don't know, like a Ben Ted or whatever. You know,
Sure.
you could pick at these people that are like basically carrying the torch or like showing that there's something that's building there. It's like Jaba was okay. Jaba was okay in the last stage. He really wasn't that good in this stage either. So it's not like we even have a guy to grab onto right now that it's like, oh, this guy can be the future when they are getting pretty much bodied versus top 20 teams at this point. So yeah, overall, and a lack of representation of this major is a huge L.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you pretty much said what I would have said as well. But I think to further emphasize is just the fact that, like you pointed out, right, we actually have an Asian contender, which has never happened before, ever. Brazil's looking so much better. And then the fact that there's not a single NA core I can be excited about. I don't think it's ever happened in the past before, man. But even its complexity, by the way, end of last year, they were looking good. The grand final of Sydney, Elige was looking fucking insane. You're like, oh, this team can really do something. So it feels like every year there's at least one team or a couple of cores we can be excited about. I think the M80 failure for me was the most disappointing, personally speaking. Although sure, Wildcard did well and all of that, M80 just not making it was a massive, I think it's slap in the face for the region. So yeah, I mean, nothing more to add to that. I think it sucks. I think it's the worst NA's been in a while. in the long run.
Unfortunately, I think I'll actually tie this to the point we were just making about Fnatic. And I feel like, first of all, in the case of Call, like I say, I do think at the moment, you have to realise Call isn't a giant esports org. Obviously, it just got bought back by Jason Lake. And they know that Counter-Strike is like prohibitively costly. Here's one thing that people never give Call credit for, which I feel is really unfair. Call is the ultimate example of a team that zigged when they should have zagged, when they made that, like, the Juggernaut team or whatever it was called, with like Blame F and fucking what's his name, Config. Because if people don't know, Jason Lake, to get those players, those stories are true. He had to like fly there like he was doing some like fucking NFL signing, like convince them and then give them enormous salaries. People like Blame F had giant contracts at the time. JKS, if you don't know, he had to go to investors to get them to let him buy out JKS because he thought that was going to be a star player. And so the problem I'm bringing up here is he did actually spend to make like a sort of like, not a super team, but like an expensive squad to make his team from what it, because it was comparable to what it was now. Back then, it just didn't have an Unleash, right? It was just like a whatever NA team that could make a major, but you knew they weren't actually good. He did the gamble that we all want. He invested the millions, but unfortunately, it was all during the online era. And by the time we got to the LAN, this is not even a joke, guys. Remember, right after that first major, the PGL Stockholm, we had that famous blast. That was when Config and Blame F, the second their contracts ended, just went straight to Astralis. Didn't even give him a chance to offer again, and he had nothing again. He had to start over again with this NA core, which basically was the extra salt players, if people remember. So the reason, and he also, remember, he even had Cold Zera on loan. Like, bro, he signed a lot of fucking big names. Like, yeah, if this was the LAN era, you'd be going, hey, even if it fails, I appreciate you for cooking. So what I want to bring up is this. He did especially for a couple of years spend a lot of money just in an era when sadly we don't think about that era. It was the online era. We've all wiped it from our memory. And then secondly, he didn't get anything because it was all online. And so the last few years, yeah, he has been min-maxing. It's quite clear they've done the opposite. They've gone like, right, what's the sort of baseline reasonable level? And then we'll gradually go up. And then obviously, look, when the chance to get a leash happens, you get him. But in many ways, that's been the rod for their own back because having a leash does to this team what Xantares does to Eternal Fire and K-Serata does to Furia. You look at it from that player's perspective and you're like, oh, this is just shit. This guy's way too good. Get better players in. But the other way around is if you took that player out, you'd have a totally different narrative for the team. It'd be like up-and-comers or can they get to the next level or, you know what I mean? Like the joke is if you take a leash out, like most of the teams we're talking about, Mongols are about twice as good. What we're talking about, it's not even a competition. So I agree, that is sad. But the issue for me is this, in the future, I keep saying this every time, I don't know if people want it to be Call, how they figure it out, because unless they right now just sign superstar players, it feels like the other angle, he basically implied it in that interview, if you look at the headline, guys. You know where the Elise headline was like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I'm in a position to win in 2025. Now that is masterful, Maui. You know, I said earlier, people fucking up like threat going, hey, we're not supposed to be competitive till 2025. That's a terrible soundbite. That's a genius soundbite, because what's great about that soundbite is this is politics. That says to every different party exactly what they want to hear. That sounds like he's going to just get Call into a position to win. Or it also sounds like if you're a player who might want a leash, I'm available, and if you can let me win, hit me up. That's genius. That gives everything to everyone while still not committing to nobody. And, by the way, if you've just lost and you are a truly great player, I also, as a fan, want to hear that from you, that you're not like, hey, I'm okay with this, I'm cool, don't blame my teammates. But also, he didn't say blame my teammates. He just sort of says, like, hey, I understand, sort of, that this isn't right, and I'm going to do everything I can to get us... By the way, masterful fucking interview headlines. Yeah, that's actually like level. And by the way, this isn't a guy who's always the best at PR stuff, so he killed it on that one. But the obvious problem is if he ever leaves, you are cooked on this team. You started with very little at that point in time. He's like carrying like 80% of the potential in he. But I know what you mean. Here's the saddest thing, Maui. I do feel like it's finances again. It's people like having to min-max and not being able to put like CS as the number one game and put all the millions into it. Because if you actually look, it isn't a talent issue, bro. Even though you're right, up-and-coming talent, you really struggle for. Spoiler, they're all in Valorant or playing other games. But if you actually just look at current talent, if we just did the old game, Maui, of take all the players out of the other rosters and build teams from NA, well, we could already make like a liquid super team, can't we? They're all still there. Lee's, Twist, Snaff. You've got, by the way, if you can have Malbs, we can throw him in there. Stanislaw's out there in the mix. By the way, Nitro still plays CS if people don't know, just won Fragadelphia. Like, the actual, by the way, even some of the up-and-coming EG players are still out there. Like, I think in theory, by the way, even Automatic's willing to play again if he can get a team. Stewie2K always hints he wants to come back. Like, you could still actually build squads. It's just the main problem right now is I actually feel like this is where NA has a problem no other region has. NA has to figure out, is NA actually about having American fans? Because in my opinion, the two ways you get American fans are obvious. You're either an NA team, you have to be all NA, or you just have to be the best. If you're the best, by the way, they'll accept it too. Like, we're joking now, Bowie, about how Liquid's barely NA, because they're just like twists and naff. But I'll tell you what, if Liquid was the number one team in the world, every NA player would be a fucking fan of this team. And they'd all be doing that joke of like, well, it's a melting pot in America, and isn't America a country? Which, listen, we all get it, it's Corp. We all in the same way. The joke is, Blair could just do that. Wasn't Donk technically on the very west of Asia? You know, like, we can all do that joke. So the main problem at the moment is they're in the middle, aren't they? Like, they've either got the call team that's just the up-and-comers, or you've got, like, the super team, but Iquid's not good enough to activate the, now we say they're all American clause. So my issue is just that, unfortunately, nobody's trying at the moment to do that. I think at the moment, NA has gone because the game's European. Like European CS has. We don't have countries anymore. That's why Launders has made a whole bizarre, it is just bizarre, sub-brand about racism, which, listen, even though fair play to him, he hasn't got yet, and he keeps leaning into it, but like, I don't know how it ever turns the corner, Launders, and becomes what we can do financially something with, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that, listen, in a fucked up way, I perversely sort of want him to keep it going, Maui, but I'm so nervous every time I see him do the
his name is Mohan Govindaswamy. He's never going to be called racist.
No, he's getting away with it for now, but, you know, fucking hell,
bro. The thing is that his Twitter community has to be moderated, because sometimes people actually go in there and understand
they actually think it's real,
tongue in cheek, and they actually just get racist.
No, what are you doing, London? What are you doing? What are you doing? By the way, I'm already envisioning, guys, as someone from media, the local newspaper article, you know, dangerous online extremists who openly brazen racists holding meetup within the area, wherever Launders land is, like, you know, this open meetup.
Toronto area.
I know.
That'd be great. In
which they play a video game in which terrorists are celebrated for their victories against the. You're like, fuck, bro. It's right there, Lord. This is right there, bro. So anyway, the point is, though, I do feel like NA people. By the way, I can tell you this from League of Legends. They don't actually give a fuck about being all NA. In League of Legends, if they could just import like the best European player, they do it, and then they even have the goal, like I said earlier, to go. He is in. What do you mean? He is the best NA player? And say, oh fuck you, some Denmark, you arsehole. But anyway, we all know Americans and how they do it. So I just think the problem there is, I feel like someone would have to almost be like Jason Lake and do it like, I'm going to make the top team, but it's going to always be NA based, because that's my vibe. I'm sort of doing the Tabsen. I want German CS to survive, not Tabsen to survive in that analogy. So I think we're also just in a tough spot. I don't know actually what the orgs want to do in that regard, because I have to say, I can't help you with the Liquid one, guys, because if you ask me to make a roster move in Liquid, I'm just bringing in another European, you know what I mean? I'm taking out Ultimate, I'm putting in some bias or something, so that ain't helping you for the NA angle, is it, at this point, you know? The only other angle we can do is, we can also just get really cynical, Maui. We just need, actually, to get a lot of these European players married to people from North America. Get that green card, and then legally, they are American. That's how it works over there, I'm afraid.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen once Trump gets in power about that, so...
Okay, right. Okay, true. That could be an offset, that's true.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.